Hello, friends, and welcome to I Know I Belong When, a podcast where bold voices, curious stories, and authentic impact amplify knowing that you are invited, seen, heard, and needed. I am your host, Christopher Bylone. This is more than a conversation. It is a movement, a mirror, a megaphone, one where raw truth meets radical hope. Welcome to episode number 1. My first guest is a radiant force of joy, authenticity, and unapologetic empowerment. Please welcome Brooklyn Dicent, the Chief Happiness Officer, a transformational speaker, comedian, and workplace happiness expert who is on a mission to help people thrive at work and in life. With a background in positive psychology, neuroscience, and energy leadership, Brooklyn brings science, soul, and a whole lot of laughter to every stage she steps on. She is the creator of the positive energy effect and is now igniting a new movement with her latest concept, main character energy. Though this is not about ego, it is about showing up as your boldest, most authentic self. It is about romanticizing your everyday, making courageous choices, curating joy, and building a personal brand rooted in consistency and courage, not perfection. Brooklyn believes that belonging is not a buzzword, it is a birthright. True belonging happens when each person knows their bold, authentic self is welcomed, valued, and loved. And it is where your unique identity not only adds value, it flourishes. And Brooklyn is here to remind us that putting yourself first isn't selfish. It is the spark that lights up your team, your results, and your life. So get ready for a conversation that is part pep talk, part power up, and all heart. Brooklyn, welcome to I Know I Belong When.
Let's go. Let's go. I am so excited to be here. Thank you so much, Christopher, for this honor of being guest number 1. Stop. This is so good.
I know, right? When I texted you about this podcast and said, hey, we're recreating the energy we created, and you just dived in and said, yes, let's do this. And so I am so thankful, so appreciative, and the honor is mine that you are guest number 1. So thank you for that. Is there anything beyond the bio that I read out that you would like our listeners to hear that would develop a deeper connection between you and the stories that you're about to share?
First of all, as you were reading it and I knowing you, I'm like, what a great, I was just enwrapped in it. I was listening to it just like a listener. And I think, from this side of the table, what I would want people to think about and to just consider is that you matter. Is that you are here on purpose, for a purpose, and with a purpose. I say that every single time, because there's a specific reason why you're here. There's a specific reason why the people who are listening to this will find it, right? There's something that needs to come through for them. And that's what I want you to do, is to have fun, sit back, and kind of not relax too much. It's kind of on the edge of your seats as well, because this is for you. And I want people to know that they're here on purpose, and we're going to help them get there.
Yeah, well, I mean, speaking of being on the edge of your seats, I mean, you keep me on the edge of my seat every time we have a conversation. So if I'm on the edge of my seat, I'm hoping that the listeners out there are on the edge of their seats, because that's where you also live. You live on the edge. So, what, as we're diving deeper into getting to, so the listeners get to know more of Brooklyn, what are the values and experiences that carry you into every room you enter, especially in a room where is not built with you in mind?
Yeah. It's kind of like, where does it come from, right? But, it's interesting because every time I am in a room, I keynote and I look at the audience, and especially somehow this last year, I look out in the audience and I only see a few of me, right? A few representations, if you will. Actually, there's a few sessions that I've gone into, and I literally was like, wow, how is this all gonna, how is this gonna come about? And I think this goes back to very early in my, I would say, life. I was a teenager, and I was constantly in new rooms, new schools, new rooms. We moved a lot. And I had to, learn how to break through this ice, right? How to break through rooms that, not that I had to, I just felt like, I'm going to say words weird. It was funner. It was funner to walk in a room and go, well, they don't know me. And, I thought, what's worse? I probably won't be here next year, so who cares, right? So let's just, that was my road training. And we moved a lot as a kid. And I now, of course, I'm thankful for it. At the time, I was like, well, nobody knows who I am. But one day I remember, early on, I want to say maybe seventh or eighth grade, and I remember seeing the kids just having an interesting interaction with teachers. And I thought, okay, well, what is it that makes them have a better interaction than other kids? And, what's going on with those that don't get good interactions with teachers? And I thought, okay, well, look, they're doing their homework, they're raising their hand, they're being interactive, they are engaging. And they had a sense of belonging. I didn't know the word at the time, but I thought, this is interesting. And as I continued in my life, I thought, well, I'm going to do that. I'm going to raise my hand, do my thing, do my work, and you know what? People will take notice. And what I noticed was that people did. And by people, I meant, the teachers and the adults in the room, who in that case to me mattered. And so that I wanted more of their attention. As I grew older, the same thing was happening. I was going to new organizations, and I was going into new teams and having new responsibilities. And I thought, okay, it's my job to raise my hand and do the homework and do the thing. So the pattern kept repeating. And then I found that there was many, many rooms where I literally was the only one of it. So whether that's the gender or that's, the cultural background, whatever identity you want to peg me on, I was probably the only one. Visually, anyway. I'm thinking, if I don't speak up, if I don't step up, if I don't speak for my own abilities, nobody really will. And it's not because they don't care about you or whatever. It's just that you don't give voice to your own self. And so I continued that pattern. And of course, in the corporate environment, it took me a while to navigate, the mystery of it and what was the secret sauce of it, and figuring out, especially when you're younger, you try to fit in certain ways. But as you get older, which is what I love about aging, is as you get older, you have a different value. And it's like, well, I have my experience that speaks for myself. I have my resume that speaks for itself. I can now speak up and be more vocal about different things. And so ultimately what it came down is breaking the pattern of just allowing or accepting status quo. And here's what I found out, Christopher. It didn't matter. For the most part where I was, it didn't get me in trouble, because the concern I had was like, oh, this is going to get me in trouble. People are going to, I'm going to get fired. And people are going to say things. I'm like, no, they really didn't. It's because of the approach that I took of stepping up, right? I wasn't, the way that I did it, I think it was the approach that I took that stepping up really made people feel like, oh, wow, we hadn't thought about that. Or yeah, you're right. We should consider a different approach. So for me, it was more around understanding that I belonged, that I mattered. And then, man, this is just fun. Let's just see what happens. And that level of curiosity has led me to where I am today. And like I said, again, I don't know who might have not liked it. I'm sure there's people along the way that didn't like what I was doing or saying or being or whatever. Well, guess what? They're not in my circle now. So,
right.
Right. And when people say, well, if like even speaking, as a speaker and as a professional speaker, I remember when I was in suits and all that good stuff. And I was like, oh, I just thought this doesn't feel right. And one day, literally, it happens to probably a lot of speakers, where I went to an event and I had forgotten a key element of my suit. And I thought, well, I guess we're just going to go with what we have. And so I basically went on stage with this cool, sort of leather jacket and sweater. And it looked professional, but it was basically more like, I'm going to have fun. I got to tell you, it was the best keynote. It launched in many ways my career in that way, because I was so myself. I couldn't stand it. I was like, this is so much fun. And people responded and resonated. And I was speaking to a corporate audience, but they resonated because I was my authentic self. And it took me some years still, even from then, to even accept it. In many ways, to accept myself.
Right.
And say, wow, I do belong in this space. This is me. Especially when you are on a stage, and the stages that we are all in, oftentimes you're the one that people look to be just actually a little bit different. You don't want to be too much like the audience. They want something a little bit different. And so I found sort of my tribe, if you will. But it took me recognizing, wow, I do matter. I do belong. But first and foremost, I had to accept myself. That I belong, that I matter, that I'm important, that I have something to say, that however I show up is the best way that I can show up. And now, I wear all kinds of things on stage because it's fun. But it's also because I'm not going to be traditional. I think that's really the key. But I think that the biggest lesson here is learning to accept who you are first. Everything else comes after, but it's who are you, and love yourself for that, and love who you are for who you are, what you are, and how you come to the world, and the world of experiences you've had, and to bring them to bear. Oftentimes people won't be able to take it all, but they'll be able to take a nugget, and unless you say it, even for you, Christopher, unless you speak it, other people won't hear it that way. And so it's our
Right,
responsibility.
and I think it's also we expect people to welcome our self, right?
Yeah,
But if we're not being authentic, how can we expect them to welcome us into the space? Because we're already putting up a barrier. You know, that barrier is gonna not allow them to be able to welcome us because there's already a barrier, right? So we
absolutely.
have the responsibility of bringing that barrier down and saying, you know what, I'm here,
Hmm.
and hopefully you're gonna welcome me in.
Hmm.
If you don't, well, there's other spaces I can go,
That's it.
right?
That's it. That's it.
And so just we have the responsibility of making sure that we are not putting up our own barriers so that people get to know who we are
Absolutely.
as humans as well.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
Yeah.
wanna yeah, so I want to take us into kind of another phase of the conversation.
Yeah.
So you know I am all about getting somebody's name right. This is a section of called We Say Names
Right.
because names are identity, legacy, and power. How is your name bringing you meaning, and what do you want other people to know about your name?
Yeah. What a great question. And you know what? I'm going to come out with it. So here's the things. People ask me, well, is that on your license? I'm like, yes, it is on my license. It's not on my birth certificate, but it is on my license. And so this is the interesting thing. My family has a number of location names. Like we love location names. I don't know what it was. I missed out on the location names. I didn't get location names. And I came to live in Washington, I want to say now almost 20 years ago. And I remember, so here's what happened. So I remember reading this magazine that said, hey, when you come to a new city or whatever, like change your name. Well, here's the crazy thing. Now, remember, I just told you we moved around a lot. And because we moved around a lot, one of the things I was doing as a kid was changing my name. Everywhere we went, I had a new name. I want a new identity. I want to see what that feels like. And it was so dramatic. I really should have gone taken theater. But anyway, it was super dramatic. And so I came to Seattle, and sure enough, I read this in the magazine. In fact, I read this in Out magazine, and they go, "Oh my God, that'd be so amazing! How fun would that be?" I'm like, I'm used to changing my name, and so I remember also having this thing. I'm like, well, why I have Argentina, Paris, like I have other location names in my family. I'm like, why can't could have gotten one? And so I was driving around Seattle, and in Seattle, I drove by this street called Brooklyn Ave, and I thought, that's it. That's my name. Now, mind you, I also at the time was an adult. I was working in corporate America, and I used it that weekend. It felt like I had arrived.
Mm.
Everybody just resonated to it. There was a vibration to it. There was a fun element to it. And I'm like, oh, this is the person that I want to be seen as. So literally that Monday, I called my parents first. I said, hey, Mom, Dad, here's what's going to happen. And my mom was like, I'm just going to call you by your regular name, but honestly, you've always changed your name, so it doesn't no surprise. So I went that Tuesday, I will never forget, March 7th of 2008. And I marched right into the court, and I said, I'm going to change my name. I thought people change their names all the time when they get married. Why can't you change your first name? And so it became my name since. And I changed it at my job at the time, and I absolutely love it. My original birth name, I have no shame on it, is Brenda. But I'm like, cool, but who is that? Right? Who is that person? And I'm like, So Brooklyn stayed with me. It's been my name since then, and it took me, I was signing it everywhere. It took me a while to sort of settle, but I just love the resonance to it. I love the energy about it, and it's like, and somebody's like, oh my gosh, like you didn't even need the last name. I'm like, I know. It's like share, and I'm like, this is great. Because I was identifying with being this entertainer, this stage persona, and I'm like, I absolutely love it. And part of that is a sense of identity, right? Who am I? How do I feel? And you're absolutely right to ask that question in terms of like, what is your name? What does it mean to you? Where does it come from? My family, everybody loved it. And I also wanted to make sure that I kept my initials because I didn't want to change necessarily my initials. My last name is Dicent. I love my last name as well. It has a Haitian background. My dad has a Haitian background as well as Dominican. And as we know, right, you have Haiti and Dominican Republic in the same sort of little sector. And people were persecuted for having French names. So the original pronunciation of Dicent is actually Dicent. And so it has a French background. And so, I mean, it's just all this sense of drama that I love. And that energy comes with me as well. So, I absolutely love my name. My parents being blessed it and said, cool. And, they get it. My mom actually, the original name that I was given because the actress at the time, there was an actress named Brenda Vaccaro. And my mom was like, I love that name. I want it to be grand. And there it is. And so at the time, that was a grand name. And for me, it was like, this is a cool name, but it just doesn't embody the person that I want to be in.
Well, she put you on a path. I mean, she put you on a path to be grand. So,
absolutely.
Right? And I think you have arrived well at grand and then some. What a great story about finding yourself and taking the opportunity to experiment of who am I? A lot of us do not get that privilege of being able to experiment, to figure out who we are, and our name is really at the root of it. It's the first thing people see. It's the first thing that comes across when you call somebody, that comes across the caller ID or in the email. It's the first thing we say when we say hello to somebody, so it is there. Powerful, really powerful, and something for me to think about, because I always think about how I arrived at Christopher. I used to be Chris. I was somebody who shortened my name when I was younger because it was easier. A lot of people shortened it, and I just thought that's what you did. You shortened the name. But then as I was getting older and becoming more comfortable in who I was, my voice hadn't changed yet. I was still that soprano 2 singing Christine Daae's part from Phantom of the Opera, clear as a bell, really made a lot of girls mad in high school. I said, no, I'm Christopher, because what was happening is on the other end of the phone, people were mistaking my high-toned voice as a female. And they were calling me ma'am. And I needed to keep correcting them that, no, it's sir on the other side. And so that's how Christopher came to be. Hi, this is Christopher, because I wanted to be very firm in who you were talking to, what my identity was and is. So keeping on that kind of line of names, what are the rituals or practices you use to honor names and identities? Because you're on stage with a lot of people and you're needing to talk. So what are the things you do to kind of make sure you're doing pronunciation checks, pronouns, titles, etc.? What's those small acts that shift the energy in the room?
Great question. And, one of the key things that I believe in terms of names is that it is absolutely necessary, important, crucial, vital for the pronunciation, the sound, the rhythm to be correct. And so one of the things I absolutely love is music. And so when I meet with somebody who perhaps has a name that is not, I'm not accustomed, I'm not going to say difficult, I'm going to say I'm not accustomed to it. The sound is different, it's a different language. I often will literally say, now listen, because people say, they say it really quickly. Like, no. I want you to slow it down. I want you to tell me your name. I want you to pronounce it a few times, and I may even write it. And I take the time to do that, often because I am good with sound, and I love sound and love languages. I'll get it right off the bat, but I won't necessarily remember it right away. So I'm like, no, say it again, slow it down. I want to hear the rhythm, because to me, that sound is the sound you heard your mother call you, or you heard other people call you, and it's really significant to the soul. And so what that sounds like is very important. Just like when I say my original name, it still has a element. If I hear that name, I'm like, there's a at a cellular level, you have a connection to the vibrational elements of that name. Because the other thing too, and we'll get into it, but names have letters. Letters also relate to numbers, and numbers and numerology and all that business has a resonance to it. So names matter, the numerology of the names matter, which, by the way, when I changed my name, I made sure the numerology was on point to make that change. It was super important to me. Thank goodness I studied numerology, because I'm like, it still it aligns. This is great. So that name is really important. So the ritual that I take is I ask people if they have a name that is unknown to me or unfamiliar. I'm like, I want you to slow it down, say it again. If I don't get it right away, I'll remember the sound of it, and then I'll pronounce it again. They're very, honored when you say their name properly, you announce it properly. If I'm on stage, and it has happened when they've asked me to say something or whatever, and I have to pronounce a name that I'm not familiar with, I'm like, no, we have to phonetically sound it out, or do, just the phonetic sound of it. Do I get it correctly? Where's the right intonation? Because the sound of the name matters, and it's just not just the name; it's what it means to you and your soul. So it's extremely powerful. Which for you, changing from Chris to Christopher, there's a significance there. You've grown, right? And you're adding all the energy of all the letters of your name, not just the Chris, but the Christopher. All those letters have a resonance and a vibration in your life.
Yeah, it's very true. And I notice that when I say Christopher, it's that I've arrived. And sometimes, my mom and other family members, they still get the privilege of calling me Chris, because that's just there. And there's a lot of times when I still feel like it's not complete, right? even though it's complete for them, it's complete for us. It's still like, oh, my mom has if she wants my attention, then it's Christopher. There's that different level of seriousness when it comes to it. So talk about, and this gets to belonging, because when your name is pronounced correct and you hear it, that automatically, I belong here. My name has been said correctly. I need to be in this space. So can you take us back to a specific stage, studio, session where you felt in your bones, to your core, I belong here? Who was present? What was happening around you? What was happening in that moment? How did that shape your voice and the trajectory of your career?
Yeah, it's such a great question again. The minute you said that, I had a few images that came to mind, but then another one came up that was early in my career. And it was when I actually was asked to do diversity training. This is now over a couple of decades ago. When, there's a lot of work around diversity, not even inclusion, just diversity. People didn't understand what it was.
Right.
So we needed people to train it. And we needed people that looked like other people, not the usual, the usual suspects. We needed people that looked differently. Well, it was my first time in my career. And I remember I was working as a receptionist for this organization, and I didn't know what I was doing with my life yet. It was still me figuring stuff out, and I was working as a receptionist, and I brought this level of energy to when I answered the phone. It was just like, "Good morning, welcome to Progressive Distributors. How can I help you? How can I direct your call today?" Well, that was my energy all the time. I hit that. To me, the switchboard was like a DJ set, right? I'm just like out here, like, "Hey, who's calling today?" Right? And I just want to have a conversation. It was a lot of fun. I did that for a few months, and then one day this woman walks in, absolutely stunning woman walks in. I mean, I always say this every time I say this about Janice Monahan. I looked over at the parking lot, and she's walking in, and I know who she was. She just looked like money. I'm like, I don't know who this lady is, but she's got something going on in her life, right? I was in my mid-20s, whatever. I'm like, this is amazing. And so she walks in, and she says, and we had one of those little window things, so you open up the window. I said, well, hey, good morning. How can I help you? Welcome to Progressive Distributors. She goes, are you the person who answers the phone every day? And I'm like, yeah, sure it is. And I'm like, am I in trouble? She goes, oh, no. She goes, just like this. She goes, is this all you want to do? And I'm like, no, ma'am. So fine. So she goes, okay, we'll talk. Well, the we'll talk turned into, she was the head of HR of this huge organization. She's a global leader. And this is when my first entry foray into HR. And she said, I just know that my manager came to me and she goes, I don't know what you did, but Janice is interested and she wants to talk to you. You're going to go to headquarters. It was a big deal. And so when I got there and she introduced me to all these people, she says, we're starting to do this diversity training. And I think you would be a great trainer. And I'm like, I didn't know anything about training in my life. I just thought this is fun. And I'm like, why not? So I walk in this room with literally all the leaders of this organization, C-suite, directors, et cetera, of this organization. And I walk in and I thought, I really was like, felt out of pocket. Like, what am I doing here, right? And one of the VPs goes up to me and shakes my hand, says my name, and says, welcome. We've been waiting for you. And I was like, okay, let's go. And they did the whole diversity training. Then we had this moment where we had to train do parts of the training. And I remember thinking, okay, because it's the acceptance that people had in the room and the openness to listen. Because we also, the number of people who were in the room or around the organization were people of color, minority, and so on. And they had a lot to say. But also they were saying, we know that we're not here to change society, but if we can just change our inner workings. And again, we didn't have all the language at the time, but really what we were saying was change culture. If the culture that we lived in felt complete or whole or accepting, it doesn't matter what's happening in the world, even then, it's like, I feel good here. And I just remember thinking, wow, this is really amazing. And I felt truly seen. And I was like, this, and then it just become an addiction. I was like, you kidding me? This training thing, this speaking thing, this is great. And so that was the first moment. And from then on, it just gave me sort of this sense of belief that I'm like, no, I'm on the right path. I'm on the right path. And I will say that consistently since then, a lot of, every time I do a talk, we do this, at the end, we do this giveaway, but we also present people with a way to give feedback back to me personally about what they experienced. And I can't tell you how often I hear or read the terms, she belongs here. she was born for this. This is keep doing this thing. And so to me, that keep doing this thing was the message of I belong. And so, but again, it took a while for me to even accept that, to recognize, my own gifts. And I think a lot of times for us humans, that's the problem, is that we don't really recognize our own gifts and what we're here to do. Oh, and we second guess. We're constantly second guessing ourselves as to what's possible. At the end of the day, Christopher, we can make this happen. It's whatever we want to make happen can happen. We just have to believe enough in ourselves before other people can believe in us.
What a powerful story of belonging. I mean, just, this individual recognized that you had energy that was needed in a different space. Okay, you're doing great at answering these phones, but we have another mission for you. And to hear somebody say, we've been waiting for you, sometimes can be a little daunting. Sometimes can be a little daunting.
I'm like little old me, like, oh, that's a lot of responsibility.
Right. What happened? I hope it's a good thing that you're waiting for me.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
Switching the tone a little bit. Your humor is your superpower. However, there can be times that it could be misunderstood. And so, talk to me about a time when your humor just didn't land well and you questioned, do I belong in this space? And so how did you work through that to get back to a sense of belonging and knowing that you knew you needed to be in that room?
Yeah. Well, let's talk about humor and how do I know that humor is my superpower? And one of the, I've always sensed it even as a kid, I had a sense of humor. I always say, if you are humorous, if people smile or like chuckle inside, and you're a comedian if they like bend over laughing, right? That's the difference. So I know for sure I have both elements. I think, and I did this assessment through, it's called Values in Action, VIA Strengths. And anybody can do it. It's completely for free, and I loved it because it helps you to understand what your what are the 5 values that together make up what we know as your signature strengths. And there's 24 of them, 24 values. The top one for me is humor. No surprise. So the thing with now when I've done this assessment with organizations, here's what I discovered that was fascinating to me, just absolutely fascinating. Over time, and I have met with a lot of corporate groups doing this assessment, just as a result of let's figure out how do we belong more in an environment. Part of it is you showing up with your values. I discovered that the people who had, and I don't know the percentage. I probably should figure it out what the percentage is. But the people who had their top value as humor, and at this point I've done, I kid you not, about 2,000 assessments, whose top value was humor. The people were small in groups within an environment. There was not that many who had humor as a top value, and all felt like they were suffering. And when I say suffering is because they would come to me after the session, after everybody's gone, and would say, here's my thing. I love to laugh, and I love to help other people laugh. It is so contagious. By the way, humor is a powerful, powerful healing tool.
It is.
But I find that I have to constantly sort of rein myself in, and I'm not sure how people are going to take it, and so on. So what I always often will tell people is, one of the key things you might want to do is for sure 2 things. 1, take comedy classes, and 2, take improv classes. Because what happens is when you learn to use your superpower, because you might have the gift, but it's not really a talent until you start to develop it with skill. It takes skill. So in the beginning, when I was going back to when I was just being funny, I found that what it backfired was that people were not taking me seriously because I found a way to make a joke about everything. I would just find a way to joke and gaff off, if you will, about a lot of things. And sometimes I still have to battle that comedic mind because it is fast. I mean, lightning fast. And so I'm like, oh, what's the audience? What's going on? To the point, it's so fast and so powerful that when I was going through comedy training, I had a comedy coach out of LA who I said, look, I don't so much want to write jokes. I think it's boring. I don't like to do it. He goes, well, what do you like to do? I'm like, I like to work with the audience in the moment, like in the flash. He goes, well, that's a hard thing to do, and a lot of comics can't do it. I'm like, I know that's hard for them. It's not hard for me. Let's test it. And we did. He put me through these exercises. He goes, I have not seen anybody be this quick on their feet. I'm like, this is what I do well. So again, it's finding your style and finding the thing that really lights you up. I said, I don't know what it is about my brain. Trust it with everything that it will tell me what to do in the moment. So there's times when it has backfired because the perception was like, wow, she's not serious. She's taking things fun, she makes it fun about everything. And so that was earlier in I would say my career, my life as a young adult. But as I got older and more wiser and understand that, especially in corporate spaces, you got to really reel it in. It's knowing timing. And that's what helped me, is to understand the timing, understand the audience, understand when humor is welcome and when other times let's just kind of pause. So it is a skill that is actually learned, which is the powerful thing of humor. Everybody has it. If you laughed at anything, you have humor. And you can use it to diffuse situations, to, turn something that is, a negative into a positive. And really all it is reframing the current experience to something different. And in many cases, to a positive. And having a point of view. But it comes with skill. So having the ability is one thing. Being able to see humor is one thing. But having the skill of knowing when to use it, how to use it, when to properly apply it, that's the skill. And it happens for both, individual contributors as well as leaders. Knowing how to use humor can be a powerful, powerful tool.
Yeah, it reminds me that our strengths can be our greatest weaknesses at sometimes, and we need to understand how to use our strengths so they don't get in our way. You have a really unique advantage point because you work with so many different organizations and get to see the way they operate, the good, the bad, and the ugly of them. What are some of the things that you think organizations are doing really well that help perpetuate a culture of belonging so everybody can say, I know I belong?
Again, as you're asking me that, I immediately thought of the U.S., but I also thought about other parts of the world. And I have worked with and engaged with other parts of the world and when in companies in other parts of the world. And I remember when I was doing a lot of this work outside of the U.S., the one curious thing I wanted to know is how are these organizations and workplaces different or the same as in the U.S.? And one categorically consistent thing was that organizations and teams that actually had fun, and this is going to sound super bizarre, but it is what it is, so bear with it. They had fun, that played, that laughed, that just knew how to be kind to one another. And it seems like, no kidding, not duh, but not every environment has that. What I found consistently was that the groups and the teams and the organizations where the leaders were the models of that. That they were easy to talk to. They accepted and understood when things were, not going well, that they said, hey, things are not going well. Here's what we got to do. Here's how we adjust. When they were transparent. And again, these things seem so common, but I saw it across the board. I'm like, what is the significant difference? And it was when leaders and managers can just kind of recognize that they're human. I remember literally sitting in doing a keynote a few months ago, probably the first part of this year, with this very large organization. And in the room were just solely leaders. And they were across the room, and I'm looking across the room at this keynote. And before I got up on stage to do my keynote, they presented on their business. And as I was listening to what they were talking about, I just heard the love and the passion and the compassion they had with each other, with their teams. They had one particular area of the business that they had to shut down. It was a slow performing area of the business, so they had to shut down the business. Which, by the way, when I was listening to it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I actually need that in my house. They did things for home. I'm like, well, what are you doing? You shut it down. I never knew this existed. I'm like, what? And I'm like, what? This is incredible. And I'm like, wait, hold on, before you shut that down, there's other people who might need this product. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then when they announced this thing, after they announced it, they said, and Brooklyn's here to help us, find happiness. I'm like, I don't know I'm going to do that because you're going to shut down this area. But what I heard the leaders talk about and immediately get into conversation about is, how do we take care of the people? How do we ensure, and this is what I heard them say, goosebumps remembering this, how do we ensure that they know that we care, that we provide them the best possible severance possible, that we do the best thing for them, and also if there's any way to absorb them into other parts of the business as best as possible. And I thought, this is amazing. Now, they were closing out also an area that was a manufacturing, so sometimes it's hard to, transition some jobs from manufacturing to, let's say, corporate services or whatever, but who knows? And maybe with some training, that could be the case. And somebody also offered, maybe if we can retrain some folks. And somebody else mentioned, well, it's an aging population. And somebody else said, well, maybe they're ready to learn something new. But at least they were willing to talk about things that were different in a very compassionate way. And I thought, folks, even if you have to close down, people will at least feel valued. right? And the
Yes.
fact that they belong and valued, and that is just so significant. So I would say, to summarize that bit, is that they showed compassion. They love their people. They communicate that, but it was all modeled through leadership. Leaders were the first ones to step up
Yes.
and, be funny, be engaging, be, commanding. And I've seen companies that where from the top down, leaders are in a certain kind of way, and everybody follows suit because your organization is a mirror of your leaders. End of story.
Yes.
You can't create change from the bottom up, even as much as you want to, because then that becomes, people being aggressive or challenging. But from the top down is always the way to go. It's how it is. But when leaders demonstrate the sense of love, compassion, fun, joy, excitement, even in difficult times, you believe it or not, humor and fun helps people in difficult times to feel a sense of courage and to feel a sense of belonging. When they feel like, oh, wow, yeah, the world around us is falling apart, but boy, these folks really care about us, and they show us. And so across the board, that's what I consistently see in organizations who do really, really well. And just similarly, when organizations call me up and they go, we would love to have you come talk to us about happiness. I'm like, great. The first thing I ask them, like, tell me what's going on for your people. Tell me about turnover. Tell me about, because there's signs, right? When things are not working, there's signs. And when there's signs, I often look back and I go, it's not the people. It's really the person I'm talking to.
It's the leader. I was in a conversation the other day with a mentor of mine, and she said something really profound to me, is that leaders get the culture they deserve. And so the culture that they are creating is what comes back to them. So if they're creating a culture of happiness, they're going to get happiness. If they're creating a culture of cutthroat and negative, they're going to get cutthroat and negative.
Yeah, it's a struggle. And they feel it.
It is a struggle.
And it's felt in the bottom line. It's felt across the production lines. It felt across with customers. They'll let you know. Because the customers, let me tell you, here's another interesting thing. Customers love to work with companies that are fun. Fun, happy, joyful. They're in it because they become part of a team. Ever noticed? That's another phenomenon I've noticed, how people are just into teams. I was just actually last week in Kansas, and boy, when you land in Kansas on a Friday, let me tell you right now, you better get ready because it is they call it game day. Everybody dresses in game day attire. Kansas, the Chiefs are a big deal. And I'm like, wow. And I'm like, I wonder what's going on? What's the lesson here? I'm like, how we all love to be part of something big, part of a community. And the Chiefs have done, I think, in Seattle, the same thing with the Seahawks, but the Chiefs have done an interesting cultural shift because everybody feels part of something, part like they belong to a team. They're all one team.
Yeah. Well, what a great way to bring this to a close and, talking about being on a team. So, Brooklyn, can you finish this sentence for me? I know I belong when...
I know I know that I belong when I feel truly relaxed being who I am. Completely relaxed being who I am. I don't have to put up any airs, put up a front, decide, who I have to be, what costume I will wear. I feel like I belong when I can be fully relaxed in my own skin. And that, my friend, is taking years to get there. I've been in organizations when I feel that, and when I feel that, here is the kicker. When a person feels they belong, whether that be in a company or in a relationship or a community, doesn't matter. What the people who are leading that, let's say in this case, organization, what leaders get access to, it's a secret sauce, and it's called discretionary energy. Discretionary energy is when people show up and do things without being told. It just comes out of their desire to serve, the desire to spill their creativity into anything they do. Discretionary energy comes from energy that is literally, it wasn't on a job description anywhere. Nobody's asked for it, but the person who's doing it knows is needed, or they've seen a problem and they want to help to solve it. So managers are always thinking, how do I get more productivity? Literally engage in people feeling like they belong, right? When we look at psychological safety, there's 4 elements to it, and we all know it. If a person feels like 4 things: 1, they can learn; 2, that they can actually, make a difference in the contribution, right? That they can also challenge the status quo, and that they can make mistakes. It's unbelievable what can happen, but the first people who have to do that and say so, it's really the leader. So when people feel like they belong, when I feel like I belong, I want to do more. I want to do more. I want to engage more.
Right.
It comes at no additional cost because of the joy of being in an environment that recognizes literally what we were born to feel, which is like that we belong from the birth to the grave, across the entire spectrum of our lifespan. That, and by the way, that feeling will never go away. It will never.
Correct.
We always want to feel like we belong in every space that we inhabit.
Well, Brooklyn, thank you for this riveting, energy-filled conversation. This has been exciting. I'm so thankful that you got to be the first guest and willing to be the first guest. What an absolute pleasure, and a great reminder that belonging is not a destination, it is a practice, and it starts with listening. So friends, if this episode challenged you to move outside your comfort zone, please give the show a follow, add a comment of what you will do to champion a culture of belonging. Thank you for listening. Know your bold, authentic self is welcomed, valued, and loved. And until next time, remember, you belong here.